because as soon as I graduated, because I had been working for 4 years during all my career, I started getting reports and people working for me and at teams, and I never felt I was ready for that. I it was very different going from a tactical job into being a manager.
Hmm. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about your career journey. I think it's really interesting for folks when they're, preparing for interviews and just like thinking about like, hey, I want this next step, is like learning from other people that have gone before them and how they were thinking about it and how they've navigated the career. So that's sort of the preamble of why I'm interested to hear this from you. But let's start, I think, right after undergrad. Your first couple of jobs were in the CPG industry. You worked, I think, at Nestle as an intern. You worked at Mattel, and then you worked at Reckitt as well. What drew you to the CPG industry? How did you end up there?
Well, I think the first thing that caught my attention was the world of marketing, just in general. As you mentioned at the beginning, I like singing, and I've always been like a very creative, artistic person. So I didn't want to be caught in the very deep businessy area of just like any industry. So I discovered that marketing existed, and also these specific companies that you said, Nestle and Reckitt Benckiser, they have very structured intern programs. And in Mexico, it's very different because you get to work for a company while you're studying your undergrad.
Mm,
So you work half time and you study half time. So almost when I started college, I started working at Nestle as an intern in marketing. And it was super cool because you get to really see the projects and how they evolve. Obviously, the college experience is very different over there. But that was very interesting. And once I was there, I just fell in love with marketing, and I thought it was so much fun. And I was lucky to be in a local brand. It's called Carlos Quinto. It's a chocolate that is a Mexican chocolate, and Nestle bought, but they kept it only in Mexico. So
got
we
it.
got to do all our strategies from scratch and do whatever we wanted with the brand with Nestle's resources, which was amazing.
That's cool.
So I love that. I had so much fun. And yeah, that's what caught me to CPG. And then one thing took to the other. I moved to Reckitt Benckiser, and at the end, I was in Mattel.
Got it. And was there something like, did you make the connection yourself, like because I'm a creative person and I enjoy that marketing is the right spot for me, or did someone at school or like a class you took help make that connection? How did that like initial spark come about?
I think it was in part school. So they taught me the main areas of a company, and it's like operations and finance and I don't know, accounting, and there's marketing. So I
And
was like,
accounting
okay,
didn't
but
sound really enticing.
exactly, not really. So from all of those, I think marketing was the one that I resonated with the most. And then I met a girl. She was like a friend of a friend, and she was an intern at Nestle in marketing. And she told me what she did day by day. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do that because both my parents are economists, and they always had very boring jobs. So I didn't think that you could have a fun job until I met her. So that's how I discovered it.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, like, I think that statement is actually very powerful, but like, I didn't realize that jobs could be like X until I saw this person or I met this person. You're like, wait, you do that? Like, my very first
Yeah.
internship was at a gaming company, and I didn't realize until like I sort of stumbled upon it. Someone showed me this book, and they're like, oh, you can intern at companies that make the games you
It's
like.
so
And I was like,
cool.
whoa, that's cool.
Yeah, and more because the guidance that we got from our parents' generation, I feel it's more like just get a stable job, even if you hate it, and just stick with it. So I always thought that was working until I started working, and I
Yeah.
loved it.
Awesome. What do you think the most important lesson you learned in your time at the CPG industry was?
Yeah, I think many times when you are not part of the marketing world, you think that they're just like creative, crazy people who come up with crazy ideas and do them. But the reality is that data is king, and all that you do is supported by data, and data decides where your company is going. So I think that's the most important lesson that I learned. And also, it helped me see the beauty and the value in numbers and in data just in general. It helped me also not be scared of it, but it's a friend that will support your strategies and your plans and your campaigns. So I think that's the most important thing. And I still see it in every class that I had during the MBA. It was the same.
Yeah. That's interesting. So basically what drew you to marketing was like, oh, it's like this creative, there's some creativity there and it seems fun and compelling. And then after working in the industry, it sounds like you'd say like that maybe it's still true, but there's a lot of analysis that still goes into it. And
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I know that you did the, I think, deferred MBA program at Darden. And so it sounds like you made the decision pretty early on in your career that like you were interested in getting an MBA. Can you tell me about how you knew that and how you made that decision?
So as I said, I started working for Nestle when I was like in my second year of college. And then I worked there for 2 years, and then I worked at Reckitt Benckiser, and I started trying to move forward with my career. And I started stumbling into, no, you're a marketer and you cannot move to this other role. Or you are already in CPG industry, you cannot move to any other to tech. You can't move to any other kind of industry. I don't know if that's something regional, maybe from Latin America,
And
but
this was like sentiment or like you considered moving and someone was like, no, you can't do that. You're
yeah, like recruiters in calls,
ah,
they said like, "Oh, sorry, we didn't know that you only worked with food and beverage, so you cannot move to tech."
okay.
Like I started feeling that I was getting too narrow too early in my
Yeah,
career. So I thought that repositioning myself as like with a broader offer would help me. And definitely the MBA was like it seemed like the right place to go to do that. And also because as soon as I graduated, because I had been working for 4 years during all my career, I started getting reports and people working for me and at teams. And I never felt I was ready for that. I it was very different going from a tactical job into being a manager.
hmm,
And I felt that I definitely needed preparation for that and training. And then MBA was definitely the place to do that. So because of those two reasons, I knew that I wanted an MBA right after college. So I applied the year that I graduated. But I also knew that for MBAs, just in general, you have to work for 2 or 3 years full time before getting into the program just to get like the most advantage that you can out of it. So I applied and I decided to put it on hold until I was ready to actually start the program.
got it. And what for you, like, how did you know when you were like ready to start? What was the signal? What were you paying attention to?
I think COVID played a big role in that. Even though I was loving my job, working at Barbie was incredible. Um, I was doing it remotely. So the fact that there was like this distance made it easier to take the decision to just leave it all and start my MBA. And also I had already like the minimum time to do it. I think it was 3 years when I did my deferred program. So I accomplished those 3 years and I was like, okay, let's do it.
Got it. Cool. Tell me a little bit, and I think based off what you said that you sort of already answered a little bit of the question, but tell me about once you got to your MBA and you were figuring out what do I want to do post MBA, how did you settle on consulting as a career path?
It was part of the same motivation of not getting trapped into one industry, one category, even in one area.
Yeah,
So it felt like consulting is an extension of the MBA and helps you learn, just be exposed to other things. I know I love CPG and I know I love marketing because that's all I ever done. But what if I'm an accountant at heart and I would never know if I don't try it? So I just think that I want to be exposed to many areas, many industries, many problems, keep learning. And also a mentor of mine told me like, look at people that you admire on LinkedIn and see what's their path. And
Mhm.
it felt like after doing an MBA and after working consulting, they could do anything.
Hmm.
I don't know, a dream job for me would be like being a CMO for a music company. And they did that. So I just felt like it wouldn't trap me at all.
Got it. And open a lot of doors. Cool. Well, I mean, where you're going, BCG is obviously, one of the most prestigious consulting firms, probably one of the most prestigious companies in the world, always in the top of, lists of best places to work. They consult and give advice to great companies, world leaders, et cetera. Like, what does it mean to you to be joining a company like that?
Yeah, I think all the people that I've met at BCG, and I already did my summer internship there, they are incredibly supportive. Obviously, they're incredibly smart, and that's a given, but being supportive is not a given in this industry. So
Mm,
I definitely love that part of it. And just being inspired by people who surround you and seeing people who you can feel related to. I think that a fear that I had before coming to the MBA and also before applying to consulting is that it would be a very traditional industry with very traditional people, that no one would look like me, that no one would have my background. And at BCG, I found that's not true, and that I feel there's a space for me to succeed. So that was very important for me on making that decision.
Can you say a little bit more about how you felt supported? It sounds like you really that was something that stuck out to you about working at BCG and maybe applying and going through the process. But I'm just curious if there's certain anecdotes or examples of that you could share, how that
Yeah,
came through in the process.
I met a lot of people before applying to all these companies, and I talked to people from every company that I was interested in. And at BCG, I met people who I resonated with. So I met a lot of Latins. I met a lot of people who came from marketing and were doing marketing at the company. So I built those connections that made it feel like there was a space for me. And also, I think just the training in general and the feedback culture was very important. During my summer internship, I saw it. Like I received feedback every week.
Hmm.
And also I received recognition when I improved. So that for me is support. And
Yeah,
that's what I really liked of the company.
cool. You are going to BCG Chicago, where you did your internship and where you'll be again shortly. Um, you obviously, grew up in Mexico and went to undergrad there, as you mentioned. Was it important for you to work in the United States, or did you consider going back immediately? What was your thinking there?
Yeah, I think I really wanted to try to live here and work here. Um, I for a variety of reasons. One of them is the opportunities, obviously. I think the United States is a very meritocratic place, or at least more than where I come from. So that was important. And the other one, during the MBA, I realized how diverse the United States is, and that is fascinating for me. And I
Mm,
love going to friends' houses who are complete from a completely different culture and eat their foods and learn their languages. And that's like that exposure, you get it everywhere in this country. Well, big cities in this country, including Chicago. So I am fascinated by that, and I really, really want to keep living it. But Mexico is amazing. I love Mexico, obviously, and
yeah,
I always have like a very special love in my heart for it. But right now I feel I can take the opportunity of staying, and I will just give it a shot.
that's awesome. Yes, I'll also agree that Mexico is awesome, and I know it sounds like you grew up in Mexico City. Is that right?
I grew up in Veracruz. That
Okay.
is a state in the East Coast, but I lived in Mexico City the last 15 years. So
Yeah,
from both places.
yeah. Amazing place, very fun place to visit. You mentioned a little bit like you felt like the United States may be more meritocratic. What 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 gives you that opinion? I'm just curious. Like, what are some of the things you've seen that make that feel like that is what you've seen?
I think, I mean, the simple fact that there exists the term American dream talks about it a little bit. Then it's, you see everywhere people who started from scratch and made a good life without connections, without coming from money. And that is basically my case. So I just felt that this is a place where I could succeed if I worked hard. And I mean, I've met so many people in different levels, people that came as undocumented immigrants and had a very rough start, and now they're able to feed their families back home. Or people like me that came through the MBA and now they're having like really good positions in corporations. So I've seen tons of stories that prove it, and I feel like it's more meritocratic than other places.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely agree. I'm just always interested to hear different folks' perspectives, especially people that have consciously made a decision to come pursue that. Like you've
Yeah.
made various decisions where you have put in a lot of effort to come, in your case, pursue the American dream, which I think like is a very powerful ideal.
Yeah, and not all, I think there's many places, like my sister lives in London right now and she thinks the same, right? So it's more just go wherever you have the opportunity to build a better life. And this is where I think I can find it. So we'll see.
Awesome. Cool. One final question I'd love to ask you is just like, as you reflect on your career to date, like, has there been any decision that you've made along the way that you regret? And if you could go back to yourself now that you have more experience and know more and are deeper in your career, what advice would you give yourself to avoid that particular decision? Or to maybe think
I
about it
think
differently at least?
I think that sometimes I've worked harder rather than smarter.
Mm,
And I've made that mistake many times. For example, when I was in college, I wanted to work in consulting very, very badly. So I applied to every single consulting firm under the sun instead of sitting down and thinking of what's the process? What are they going to ask me? I didn't care. I just went and applied and applied and applied. And I never prepared for any of those applications and any of those interviews. And obviously I didn't get a job. So it's more like then a boss told me like life is 80% planning and 20% execution. And it made sense. And I think the same thing happened to me when I was preparing for the GRE, for example.
mm,
Didn't do GMAT, I did the GRE.
yep.
Um, I I studied, or well, I didn't study. I did more like practice tests for a year, like crazy. And I never sat down to work on what I really needed to work on. So
Mm,
I presented the exam and I did terrible. So I had to work for another year to prepare. And now this time consciously and like with a plan. And now I was able to make it. So it's I learned from those two lessons, and I have other examples. It's just more like sit down and plan, and then you will do better than if you just go for it and work
yeah.
too hard.
Well, and what you were talking about earlier, Daniela's master guide and the spreadsheet of like feedback of noting all of it, and like think that's a very sort of meticulous way, right? To like not just like do a million cases and hope it works out. It was do a set
Exactly.
amount of cases, take specific notes, try and find patterns and feedback. So it's
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. So that's a big lesson that I've
makes
learned.
sense. Well, thank you so much for joining. It was great to have you join the channel today and share your experiences with us.
For the space content, this was very fun.
Awesome.